Assalamu alaikum, this is Sarah from Arkan and you are watching Live Prague.
Les ratures ne cachent pas les traces, ou bien tout juste en surface. Je te laisse croire le contraire si ça peut te plaire. Toi qui vises la perfection, n'acceptant point d'objection. Je te laisse voir jusqu'où tu peux t'y perdre. À trop vouloir jouer ce jeu, l'illusion prend place peu à peu. Les repères, les marques s'estompent à mesure que tu te trompes. À croire aux mensonges qui s'empilent, ta vie ne tient plus qu'un fil. Tout croire.
Bonjour, aujourd'hui, au revoir en français. I bet you never thought I would say that. What does it mean? Well, I'm simply saying welcome. Today we have a review in French. Well, not entirely, because my French is not that good. This sentence okay, but apart from that, that's where it ends. But the album I have is in French. Crash by Elora. A very interesting album in many aspects. First of all, the label that released this album, Progressive Promotion Records. A German label. We have the Germans and the French working together on releasing beautiful music. Also, Crash is the debut album of the band Elora. With this album, they definitely hand out a very good calling card. Trust me on that, but I'll try to explain why this album is so good and why this album is definitely worthwhile to have. Now, I always try to do a little bit of research before I bring a review to get to know the band a little bit better than just listen to the music. So I checked out the website of the band, but unfortunately it was in French. Well, almost entirely. Fortunately, the biography was in English. For some reason they had the good sense, let's make that in English so more people can get to know us, which is very important. The band was founded in 2004 by the bass player Jean-Vincent Filippini. And at the same time that he founded this band, he also became father to a little girl. Now you guess the name of that little girl. I don't think that's very difficult. Yes, Elora. That makes this band very personal to him because he named the band after his daughter. Then they started working on their debut album. It is nice to see that the band did not only pick up the name from that little baby girl, but a little bit more. The band treated the music also as a parent would treat their children. They would teach them, they would learn them to, pick up different influences and mix them and mold them into, a beautiful person. And that is exactly what this band has done with this album. I mean, what they list on their website is some of their influences. And of course, everyone is influenced by music you listen to or by bands you like. And in this case, I found the names that they list as influences very interesting. Because of course you have familiar names, Pink Floyd, Genesis. Then a band that I only know by name, Magma. Interesting. But they also list more contemporary prog bands like Porcupine Tree, like another French band called Lazuli and Riverside. And they put all these different influences and they used it to create their own sound. Because if I listen to this album, I don't hear any of those bands. But if you listen well, of course you can hear certain influences or the way they wrote the songs and they composed the songs or they performed the songs. That might give an indication of what they have been listening to or who inspired them. But it is very much Elora that you hear on this album, and I really enjoyed listening to this album because it sounded very fresh to me. It had a very beautiful, warm sound. I kind of miss that sometimes in music, so I'm very happy to find it in this band.
La douleur apparente, ils oublient. Même dans le noir, ils cherchent à voir, à comprendre, à toucher.
What I also noticed and also like very much is the balance in the music. Each musician gets enough room to play their parts. No one is really dominating, yet they managed to make the bass player stand out a little bit. And he does that very well. And that is something I like because of the way he plays. And if I was listening to the album, and there were a couple of songs, and the most notable one that stands to mind is one of the last tracks on the album called Elle, where I almost get the idea that he plays a bit like Mark King from Level 42, you know, with the thumb, the plucking and everything. Really cool, and I like it the way how they blended that kind of bass sound into this album. For me, that makes it stand out a little bit. Of course, when you listen to the album, you know, you listen and you say, well, is there something that stands out, that picks my attention? I gotta say, I really enjoyed every track on this album. 10 tracks, around an hour of music. But there was one part that really stood out for me. 2 tracks, actually, plural, more than one. Espoir, part 1 and 2, tracks 5 and 6. Together, that clocks around 12 minutes, a little over. I would call that a sort of a mini suite. And, you know, I mentioned this album to be the calling card of the band, but narrow it down to those 2 tracks. You know, if you listen to those 2 tracks, you know what Elora is all about. And I think that is really beautiful. And those 2 tracks really blew me away when I was listening to them. Because they really build up the song, you know. It's of course they have some more time to develop the song, you know, and bring in all the different instruments. It has really beautiful keyboard parts, some dreamy synthesizers around it, an excellent rhythm section, really great, beautiful guitars as well. You know, there's a really amazing guitars on this album, and you know, when I was listening to that song, I thought, you know, wow, this is fantastic. You know, I would almost say it doesn't get any better than this. You know, I'm saying that a lot because I'm hearing a lot of beautiful music, and I heard a lot of beautiful albums. This is one of them, definitely. This is absolutely one of them. The vocals are also a very interesting part in this album. They reminded me a little bit of Touchstone, because Touchstone has 2 singers. They have a male and a female singer, and that combination, that blend works very well. They have a similar thing going on this album as well, because in the first track you hear Damien Dahan. He is the vocalist of the band, but already in the second track, Elle Espère, a female vocalist comes in. First just background vocals, but along the way her parts grow, and eventually she also takes the lead in a couple of songs. That vocalist is called Anastasia Musali, and I gotta say, she has a very beautiful voice. And from track 4, Ici Encore, she's kind of taking the lead. But you hear the male vocals as well, and that you know, the way they interchange and everything, well, that reminds me a little bit of Touchstone. I like it with that band. I also like it when Elora does it. So that is another highlight for me, that dual vocal thing. I kind of like that.
Elles sont mises sur les yeux. Elles quittent un monde préconçu et goûtent enfin la vie. Elles sont mises sur les yeux.
In conclusion, I would say Crash is a very fine, it's a well composed, it's a well performed album. It has a very rich and warm sound that really surprised me for a beginning band, that they bring, well, such a good sound, well produced also. Also when you listen to it, you know, the sound is absolutely fantastic. It is more modern prog, you know, it moves more into, well, for example, Lazuli or Riverside. That kind of area, it goes a little bit more, and less in the ways of Genesis or Pink Floyd. When I was looking at it, it comes in a digipack, and the one thing I noticed when I opened it up, they don't have a booklet with it, but as you can see, they have a lot of names listed here, and they obviously have a lot of people to thank. But the problem is a little bit, you don't have any additional information. The information given on the disc is also minimal. The website, as I mentioned, is in French, except for the biography, but also the member pages are in French. It would have been nice if that would have been English, you know. It would have been nice to know a little bit more about who is making this music. Aside from that, I mean, fortunately we have a universal language, and that universal language is called Music, and that is what you find on this album. And I gotta say, everyone will understand this album because they are very fluent in that universal language called music. At least when I listen to this album, that is the impression I get. So I would certainly recommend this album, Crash by Elora, very highly. Really worth to have, to listen, to enjoy. I think the album will put this band on the map. They are, slowly getting some attention to play live as well, which is very nice for them. Well, let's hope maybe one day they will come to Holland as well or play in other parts of the world. This band definitely deserves your support and deserves a lot of attention. So I would suggest, check out the website, listen to the album, and if you like it, buy it. Elora, Crash.